Hey YouTube, the other side of that forest is the Mediterranean Sea, which is already warm enough to swim in. It's about 26 degrees today, it's lovely. This is the final in my process of deconversion away from being a Jehovah's Witness, relating to my social network this time. But before I start, I'd like to take a moment to discuss J.W. Fairytale's public declaration. Like many, I was uncomfortable seeing the memorial disrupted and had to watch that video twice to find my rational mind. That video challenged me because my discomfort was a result of unresolved Jehovah's Witness conditioning. Here I am, I make apostate videos, and even then I wasn't entirely free from the JW mind control. Our fairies video helped me identify and hopefully deal with another area where I was still subject to the governing body's invidious control. If the meeting being disrupted was Scientology, a clan rally, ISIS, Creflo Dollar, or any other harmful in quotes religious group, I'd have had no such qualms. But the fact that I initially did reflects poorly on my, till then, undiscovered partisan and irrational view. Only those mentally shackled like I was would object when a dangerous group have their activities briefly protested. To those still uncomfortable about that interference, I'd say something cannot be both harmful and sacred. In any other field of thought and action, you'd remove a threat to your family and self, even if the threat had attractive aspects. It makes no sense to ignore that. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Tony Prime and Propaganda Techniques and the other for helping me learn something about myself. They know that sometimes you have to shout to wake someone up, especially when the sleeper thinks he's already awake. But I learnt another thing from this video. J.W. Fairytale would have been an outstanding defence lawyer. I'm sure you can see by now that my Jehovah's Witness experience was one of temporary and insecure attachments. I've seen friends and family shunned and learnt that companionship was something very temporary and very conditional. Independent thinking meant I had no social network I could rely on. None of God's own people would talk to me if they knew I disbelieved. To them, a believing child rapist is a better person than a decent non-believer. But the game of two faces kept me safe. When I realised there was no future for me at the Hall, I concentrated on maintaining my family life with my parents. I took the view that I had a lifetime to do what I wanted, but in the meantime I had to live a life my parents would accept since I depended on them. The strange thing was, I was a strange hybrid human in my mindset. Although secular, I couldn't get my head around having to plan for the future, or that I had a limited life. I couldn't shake the idea that I was somehow immortal. The weird Jehovah's Witness thinking was still sticking to me, and it's something I have to deal with even now, even though the time-worn face in the mirror mocks me. I did feel sorry for my parents, and I felt but rejected the pressure to please them. I acknowledged that rejecting their faith was hard for them, and I'd caused them embarrassment amongst their weird conditional friends. Unfortunately, my parents' attitude to education was the scanter the better, and good respectable manual labour would bring me back to Jehovah. Because I hadn't got wet, they'd told me I must leave as soon as possible, but fortunately they didn't throw me out. Not getting baptised had saved me that awfulness. They just wouldn't support me in any further education. Just leave when you're ready. I got off lightly. I know so many that suffered worse than I. I can't find the words to express how isolating it is knowing that the JW people around me that had watched me my entire life would soon treat me as if I was dead, as if I was carrying some dread communicable mental disease. These same people that had given me sweets and little gifts would emotionally turn on me and wish upon me every misfortune the world could offer. Frankly, I was daunted, but started the process of finding a job whilst my school urged me into higher education. One teacher even went as far as to apply for and secure for me a place at university and prepared papers for scholarships a little earlier than most people go. But although I was pretty book smart, I was totally naive and intimidated by the prospect of supporting myself while studying. I'd never so much as seen a bank statement or checkbook, and after appealing again to my parents for help, knew that venturing unprepared into the world alone was my only option if I was to remain true to myself. It was a world I'd been taught to fear and consider illegitimate and temporary. My parents were good Jehovah's Witnesses and piled on the pressure by telling me that I must leave, but the day I leave I will be treated as any other worldly person. There was no one I could talk to at the Kingdom Hall. This problem was way over my head, and even if there was anyone I could approach, I knew exactly what they would say. They would reach for a Bible and make some totally irrelevant 2,000-year-old verse apply to my situation. Fortunately, at a young Jehovah's Witness wedding, I met someone who would become my first wife. I was way too young, but crazy in love, and we rescued each other. She was under unfair discipline from her own congregation. She lived at home like me, and together we planned our escape. We thought we'd invented sex, and in the afterglow that first time cried together and wondered how Jehovah could possibly kill us for the love we felt and the wonderful thing we'd shared. Shortly after, I had a little house with the help of a kindly Sikh-raised gentleman I met through work who had taken a fatherly interest in me. He's dead now, but I'll never forget him, and we were friends until he died. He was part of the world that Jehovah couldn't wait to kill. My friend took the time to tell me about bills and banks and papers and how to deal with government agencies, and in some ways I looked up to him as a father. My own father didn't think it was necessary for me to know about these things because the end was so near. Neither did anyone else at the hall, and that was decades ago. My friend just chuckled when I told him what my parents believed, and I chuckled when he told me what his father believed. Although I had to admit Sikh tenets were more noble than Jehovah's Witnesses, less ignorant, arrogant, and certainly less sectarian. But after I chuckled, he told me when he was young, he too had to leave his family home over religious differences. His father had wanted him to have a life of religious meditation to become a guru or elder, but my friend had only wanted to go into business. He'd seen a talent in me, but a total lack of preparation for living a meaningful life. He was one of my life's angels. He showed me how to go to university and later encouraged me to present my thoughts in my chosen field for publishing. I was lucky. In the world I was raised to fear and despise, I met people with a genuine interest in a young man, and they wanted to help me achieve my goals rather than conform to theirs. It was real people doing real things, offering and wanting real friendships. And it was in the world I learnt what friendship was and the concept of loyalty and commitment. Of course, my rebel JW marriage failed when she returned to her vomit, and I refused to go with her. I guess I want everyone considering joining the JWs to know that the love bombing and the apparent warmth is all fake, fake, fake. The moment you get baptized, you'll be forced to shun or be shunned. If you must spend time with them, just remain an unbaptized publisher. That way you can still make choices for yourself. There is no real love in the Kingdom Hall, and no one cares when you scream. So that's it. Those were the reasons I was tempted to remain a witness. But as you can see, the smallest logical thought from an isolated but thoughtful child destroyed it. The people in the hall have been sold and bought a total fantasy and have remained true to the corporation whilst the corporation has abused them. I don't hold my parents and the adults around me responsible. They were just seeking easy answers to life's complex problems. In the secular world, it's the criminal con man we look at, the wolf amongst the sheep that we protest, disrupt and oppose. The governing body will fade away if you ask one simple question. Where are your tokens of divine selection? Prove your lofty claims. Before I go, has anyone considered the proposition that Jehovah is a primate? We're made in God's image according to the Bible, and we have about 99% identical DNA to a chimp. Does that mean Jehovah's an ape too? Don't forget, his angels were so human they could successfully breed with us. And if they were so human, why didn't female angels come to play too? Or is it all from the imagination of bigoted goat herders who didn't understand science?